Friends, interment will take place at Arbor Crest Cemetery here in Ann Arbor. At the family's request, we will not be traveling in procession to the cemetery. Anyone wishing to attend the interment at the conclusion of the service, please go to your cars, drive on your own to the cemetery, and we will allow ample time before continuing with the committal service. The family will be sitting through tomorrow afternoon at the residence, 2726 Winter Garden Court in Ann Arbor for friends to call. The Shiva hours will be on Tuesday and Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Religious services will be conducted both days at 2 p.m. It is suggested for those of you who wish to further honor Mitchell's memory may do so by means of a contribution to Jewish Family Services of Washtenaw County or to a charity of one's choice. We have all this information on these printed out sheets with directions to the residence and the cemetery in our lobby, which you may obtain at the conclusion of the service. Thank you.
It says in the Talmud, Ezehu mikubad hamechabed et habriot. Who is honored? One who honors, loves, and cares for other human beings. We're here to honor the incredible life of Mitch Rycus. And we're to remember him, to share stories, and to speak. It says in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a time to be born, and there's a time to die, a time to gain and a time to lose, and a time for silence and a time for speaking. And this is one of those times for speaking. It uplifts the family, it expresses comfort, and I know Mitch is listening. First, on behalf of the entire community, I express condolences. First to Carol, also to obviously Mitch's beloved wife. To Lisa and to Peter, and through marriage to Solace and to Mina. To the grandchildren, to Sam, Evan, and Tyler, and Abe, and their partners, Natasha, Lauren, and Emily, and Mila Lou, great-granddaughter. I also really want to honor at this time our deepest condolences to Mel, who's joining us through streaming, Mitch's brother. They had a very, very special relationship, very deep friendship and relationship, and our deepest condolences to you. And my personal condolences to all of Mitch's extended family and friends. His friendship group was so, so tight. And at one point I said, I want to read the names of those who I want to express condolences to who are such close friends. And the list got longer and longer and longer. So I'll say that you know who you are. I know that many of you called over the last couple of weeks, and I know that Mitch told his family, tell them, I'll see you at the funeral. He's happy you're here. I want to explain that following our sharing some words, those of us who wish to in this frigid weather can join the family for the burial, which is brief, the burial at Arbor Crest, and quickly follows the service. And then we'll be going back to the house for what's called Shiva. Shiva means dwelling at home. And it's our tradition of just going to the home, and it's like a wake. It's like where we comfort the family, and we get to tell stories and try to cheer them up, maybe get them to eat something. And so back at the house, everyone is invited to come and share a story, if they have one, or just to be together and support the family. There'll be when it was announced that there'll be a service, I promise you I will make the service mercifully brief. It's only about 7 minutes or 6 minutes, and it is so that the family can say the traditional prayer of the Mourner's Kaddish. And it's great to make a community for them to do that within. Back at the house, I'll prepare you in advance. If you know the house, you will know that the parking is very, very challenging. So I'll tell you that there is valet parking. It is free, it's been paid for, the tips have even been paid for, and it's easy to access. And in addition to that, if you see a garage, if you see a garage door in the neighborhood along the street that has a colored piece of paper on it, that means that it's okay with the neighbors to park in that driveway as well. So as long as you don't block anyone who doesn't want to be blocked, we're grateful to all of the support the family's been shown. So this ceremony will continue at that time. It's customary to begin with a quote or two, as I've done from the Talmud, and there is an additional one I share at this time. Bibayit michutz titzafenu. The Torah calls our attention to that the casket, the ark, it's the same word in Hebrew, aron, for casket and for ark, that the aron that held the Ten Commandments was lined with gold on the outside and on the inside. And so the rabbis of the Talmud ask, what need would it be to have it covered on the inside? On the outside, we understand, but on the inside, no one will ever see it. They answer that the inside of a human being should be identical to the outside, because that is the case with true goodness. Its open expression should be matched by the same golden heart inside. That's a heart that Mitch shared, same on the inside as on the outside. At this time, we begin with remarks, stories, memories in that process. And it's my honor, I know first we're calling up Peter and Lisa, but first it will be, remind me, who's speaking first? Good. First we invite up Peter.
I want to thank everyone for coming today. We really appreciate it. The other day, my sister says, you're 63 years old. You have 63 years worth of memories, stories, love that you're going to want to express. So please take your time and do that in 3 to 5 minutes. My family is definitely crazy. My dad had the greatest sense of humor, even up to the end. I'm driving on Wednesday to the hospital when I get the news that he passed. I called David, could barely get a couple words out. I get there, and my mom's sitting next to the bed, and my dad's lying there, and I look over at him, and I go, don't get up. And immediately I hear from above, screw you. But it started with an F, And that's my dad, He's just always had the greatest sense of humor, always just loved being with people and making people happy and going on that. You're going to hear me say many names, Dad, Zadie, which means grandfather, Mitch, Ba, which means father in Nepali, Mr. Rycus, Professor Rycus. He had many names, and we're going to be hearing stories where people are going to be calling him by different names. He was the same man, but people have different relationships with him and different experiences. Even though they're all very different, they're still all very much the same. And so in our talks today from Lisa and Sam, you're going to hear probably some things we might say the same, so that's one reason I'm going first, because that way I get to be the original, and that's all right. Zadie was always just so excited about life and sharing his happiness and other people's happiness. When he heard you had good news or bad news, he was there for you, and he wanted to hear that. He wanted to share that with everybody. It just seems just so funny. A couple months ago at Mina's quitting party, many of us were all together saying, boy, this is just so great that we're together having fun. And now we're back together, but at a not such a fun time. But I know he's like, when we are together, we always have fun when we see each other. And we shouldn't feel bad or guilty that we can't laugh and get together with our friends and say what we want to say and still enjoy ourselves and still be sad at the same time. I don't know who brought it up, but in the hospital, they asked the AD, or Zadie asked, what are you most happy to be called? And he goes, Professor. And if all of us who know him, which we all do, it's like you could see that. He was a mentor. He loved to teach. He loved to share his knowledge and to help us when he can. He had many professions. So even after he was a professor, he wrote many books. Before that, he was a mathematician. He was a physicist. So listening to my friends, they would come up with him when we were little, even up to now, with their questions and things going on in their lives. And he always had advice. He always had something so good to say. He was always caring for everyone. He was always helping someone with something. which I don't even know about, but all these people come up to me and always telling me, boy, your dad was such a big help for me. He was always there. He had great advice. He had patience of a saint. Even now, and as a child, I would come up with him with the most irrational, crazy stuff and just start raving about things. And he'd listen and shake his head and then go on and on for way too long for me with my patience, but to give me a good example of why I'm wrong and this is what you should be thinking. I remember one time I was in high school and we're driving up here on Parkway and we look over and there's my sister at the bus stop smoking a cigarette. And he looks at me and goes, "Is that your sister?" I look at him and the guy's, "No." You know. I am a terrible liar. And he knew I was a liar, but like he would let us make our own mistakes. You know, it's like, okay, you know, that's what's going on, but so that's my father. You know, I could tell him anything, I could lie to him, but he would know. My father, when we were in high school, decided to switch professions. He wanted to get his PhD. He wanted to go back and be a professor. He wanted to do urban planning. He sat us down and he goes, "This will be a big lifestyle change for us because we're going to be losing my income and my mom is going to be supporting us." And we as a family said, "No, of course, that's fine." You know, we grew up with people changing jobs, changing professions, doing what feels right for themselves. So as we move through different jobs and different stages in life, that's always been very normal for us. Be it we stay with something for 30 years, like I have almost now in my job, or switching around. If it feels right, you stay, as long as you're doing what you feel is good and helping with other people. My mom was like they were just the best together. They just had so much fun, and you could just see they were made for each other, even when they argued. I remember Zadie saying, on our honeymoon, we're driving, and if you've ever driven with Booby and she tells you where to go, you're not going to go where you want to go. And they were, you know, it's like, I'll stop the car right now and you can get out. I don't care if it's my honeymoon. You know, until the end, I'm sure that as they're going places, my mom let them know, it's like, are you sure you want to go this way? Yeah. Some just random memories. I remember when we were a child, like we'd go to the pool, my mom would always be there, and maybe once or twice a summer, my dad would come for like 9 minutes and throw us in the water, but we would just remember that because there's my dad, he'd be there, he wanted to do something with us. Some things my dad didn't think through so much, you know, as much as he did. It's like I remember we went to Montgomery Ward's in Arborland, and he goes, "We're going to buy a motorcycle." I think this is great. That motorcycle didn't make it to the dirt on the ground before my mom made us return it. You know, it's just like, okay, so that wasn't thought out the way we should have.
You stole my story.
Well, I told you that's why I wanted to go first. That's fine. You can say better.
Okay.
My dad was also an inventor. When we were living on Aurora with some of the friends, he invented space laser and a chicken shoot or something like that. He was ahead of his time with the people about doing arcade games before there were arcade games. He was always there for me. I remember it was maybe 15, 20 years ago, I had like a bad cold and my throat was getting worse and worse, and I started like coughing up blood, thinking this can't be good. So I call, you know, the doctor or whatever on the phone and go, "Well, you could stop breathing, so we'd recommend go to the ER." So I go to the ER, and you know, I'm sitting there, and they finally get me, and I'm in the hallway because of course there's no beds, and just waiting, you know, to see things. And all of a sudden, I see my dad in his walk coming down the hall. And it's like, you didn't need to come, but he just wants to be there. He's there for you at all times. He loved his family, his friends, and his pets. His pets more than his friends and families, if you know him. You know, a world without him. You know, people have been saying, it's like, I can't imagine a world without him. Well, he's still with us. Even though he's not with us, he will always be with us. We're just so happy that we had him for 92 years, and he will always be loved by us. Now I'm going to let my sister talk, and I'll leave you up here.
Well, thanks. So he stole my story, and now he's going to sit down. So I'm Lisa, Peter's older sister, and I'm Mitch's little girl. He was my North Star. His life was truly remarkable. He had 92 years on this earth, and he didn't waste a minute of it. He reveled in life. He ate it up with a spoon and showed all of us how much he enjoyed it. And because Mitch was a master storyteller and that apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I was going to tell the Monkey Ward story about buying the motorcycle when he took Peter and I to Arborland many years ago when we were in elementary school, we were all so excited about the motorcycle. We got home, and of course, Mom was not excited, and that motorcycle never made it home. But it didn't deter Mitch from riding motorcycles. I have a vivid memory of him on Herb Mummery's motorcycle, giving kids rides on the Memorial Day block party on Aurora Street. He rode a motorcycle every opportunity he could get, even dropped put Steve Falls' motorcycle down on the ground when he rode it. So it didn't deter him that Mom didn't want him to own a motorcycle. That's fine, I don't have to own one to enjoy it. So another story that I think really exemplifies who my father was and how he was as a parent is also a Peter story. So Peter was little, about the same age, learning to read, and he comes in the house one day and he says to my dad, "What does fuck you mean?" And my dad said to Peter, "Where did you read that?" And Peter said, "I read it out on the sidewalk in chalk." And without missing a beat or even stopping what he was doing, my dad said, "Go back and read it right and I'll tell you what it means." So that was Mitch in a nutshell. That's who he was. He saw the world exactly as it was, but it didn't ever let it deter him or diminish any of his passion. And he didn't hide the ugliness of the world from us, but he never lost his optimism or belief in the promise of this country and that the moral arc of the universe would ultimately bend towards justice. His career, as Peter pointed out, ranged from aerospace engineering to academia to consulting to prolific novelist, which he started at 75 with the publication of this book, Rub Up, Musings of a Navy Corpsman, which was a loosely autobiographical book based on his time in the Navy. So the dedication to that book, you'll understand when I read it, because Peter just told you who he was. This book, at 75, is lovingly dedicated to my wife, Carol, my daughter, Lisa, and my son, Peter, to let them know changing careers is never not an option. So, thanks. You're going to hear a lot of things about my dad, and as Peter said, and as the rabbi said, there's no way to honor a life like my father's in a short speech from a bima at a funeral. We would be here for days and not scratch the surface of his professional accomplishments, let alone the rest of his life. But at the end, he was my dad, and I was his little girl, and so I want to thank him. Thank you, Dad, for being my hero. Thank you for teaching me the world was a wonderful place, despite the fact that there are real monsters. Thank you for raising me to be a dragon slayer before I even knew what one was. Thank you for picking me up when I fell down and standing right there to encourage me to try again. Thank you for teaching me to challenge the status quo and question everything. Thank you for teaching me the joy of family, dogs, music, literature, the arts, sports, vacations up north, fishing, and of course, arguing. Thank you for teaching me the beauty of memorizing something that you love and keeping it with you forever. Thank you for making me loud, bossy, and confident. Thank you for letting me make mistakes and recover from them. Thank you for giving me inner strength and passion. Thank you for being a lifelong crusader for justice, tolerance, and acceptance, and for passing that on to your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. His apple of his eye is little Mila. Thank you for seeing me who I am and for never asking me to be anyone else. Thank you for your unconditional love. I'm going to close. That's my Mila monster. I'm going to close with the second to last, the seventh stanza from one of my favorite poems, Sunday Morning by Wallace Stevens. And it does a much more beautiful job than I ever could of depicting how a man like my dad lived his life. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men shall chant an orgy on a summer morn, their boisterous devotion to the sun. Not as a god, but as a god might be. Naked among them, like a savage source, their chant shall be a chant of paradise, out of their blood retreating to the sky, and in their chant shall enter voice by voice the windy lake wherein their Lord delights, the trees like seraphim and echoing hills that choir among themselves long afterward. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish and of summer morn, and whence they came and whither they shall go, the dew upon their feet shall manifest. Rest easy, Dad. I got it from here.
We invite up Mitch's grandson, Sam.
Morning, everybody. Bear with me a second. I'm going analog with this. My name is Sam McLonis, and Mitch Rycus is my Zadie. Yesterday, today, and forever, I will always be Mitch Rycus' grandchild, his firstborn's firstborn. I'm so proud to say that. However, I don't stand alone. Everyone here today knows themselves as Mitch's something, whether it's his loving wife, brother, grandchildren, children, great-grandchild, uncle, cousin, friend, partner, and so many other amazing associations. The thing about my Zadie is that knowing and being a part of his life goes beyond a simple association. To have been a part of his life and for him to have been part of yours is an attribute. Everyone here will always be able to carry the attribute of being Mitch Rycus' something, and we were all made better for it. It is an accolade that so many, yet not enough of us in this world get to carry, but his reach goes further even still. There are those far away in space and or in time that will inevitably be touched by something that Mitch sparked. It could be a student of his or a student of his sharing a lesson in a way that only he could. Or perhaps it's his words bringing comfort to a curious reader who finds one of his novels on a shelf somewhere. Or it could be his latke recipe brought to full and powerfully smelling life that remains stuck to your clothes for weeks on end, well past Hanukkah. My Zadie lived an incredible life, and his time here is a summit that few will ever be able to reach in kind. Reflecting on his life and the blessing that has been my own 35 years that I've been able to share with him, and his wisdom, his love, and his guidance, I saw just how deep the impact has been, not just on my own life, but the lives of so many that he was able to share his time with. I've always known this, but his absence today makes it all the more clear. My Zadie, like my mom after him, always told me to write what I know. So please excuse me while I meander my way through my feelings and share in the only way I've ever known how. I've tried to come to terms with never being able to hear him say in his loving and excited way, Sammy. I will never get to hear his voice or hug him again, and that pain is something that I don't think will ever dull. But, like his words, that sound is as clear as ever in my head, and I'm left with so many amazing gifts that he has given me. It is without a doubt that I can say that I am today because of him. He's imparted on me so much, both directly and indirectly, whether it's by his grand design or not. He made us all in this room better, and he's touched us in the simplest of terms. He's made us more. I truly hope that we all get to say that we've added to the world. And in the case of my Zadie, there's no question that he did. The enormous space in this room and in this world that he's left behind is filled by all that he's actually left behind for us. The love my Zadie had for my bubby Carol was immeasurable, and everyone who knows them knows what a sense of true partnership, love, and family are. That example that the two of them have set have clearly been followed. This is witnessed, for all that know, my Uncle Peter, my Aunt Mina, my mother Lisa, and my father Solace. The warmth and security of this family was constructed from a foundation laid by my Zadie and my bubby. I've started my own family, and I carry that very same love that began with Mitch and Carol, now with my amazing wife and our child Mila. Mila is the third generational manifestation of that love that began with Mitch and Carol. Even at 6 months old, while I was showing her pictures at my parents' house of her Zadie these last few days, she recognized him. Her smile erupted at the man who waited 91 years for her to come along. And his very last gift to me was imparting the same love that he had for me onto her. And she will always know that. I owe him for so many of the indescribably amazing things that I've come to know and experience. I believe truly that he saw the work he had done in the faces of his loving family and friends and knew the world was ready to move on without him. Unfortunately for us, we don't quite know that yet. But like the amazing father and teacher that he was, he's trying to let us try it on for size. Make a few mistakes, figure out this for ourselves before his lessons fully reveal themselves. We will be guided by his immortal presence and learn to navigate life with the tools that he's left us. I just wish we didn't have to say goodbye for this final lesson to set in. There's never been a moment in my life that I haven't felt his love and guidance. Life provides very few constants, and while this loss really does feel like the destruction of such a thing, I have to ask myself, is it really though? I suppose this is what you get when you're blessed to spend 92 years on this world. 92 years. Shaping it, molding it, leaving behind inventions, novels, academic publications, memories, friends, families, students, more things that we could ever hope to quantify. His life feels like something that should always be. Mitch should always just be here, shouldn't he? With the deepest of intent in my words, he really will be. I'm going to keep repeating that in my head to myself just to understand the shifting of presence, but deep down I know it is true. His very soul lives on in the lessons that he's taught me because he taught me to be curious. He lives on in his tenacity because he taught me to be passionate. He lives on in his intelligence because he taught me to never stop learning. He lives on in his courage because to live as he did, when you take big risks, you get big rewards. He lives on in his love because he showed me that love is a gift that you share with those you care about most, and you do it all the way. I remember when we celebrated his retirement. I was young, but I still remember this, because it feels like an age ago, and it was. The running joke of the event was that it was a retirement in name only, because he wasn't going to quit. It was just a stop from his latest career aspiration. What would follow after was years of more labor, which were a byproduct of a passion and a genetically dominant trait that we've labeled the Rycus. Whether it was writing, consulting, learning new skills in both physical and technological form, which I believe most of you have witnessed in his latest Photoshop skills with my wife and child and I in a Jurassic Park adventure, my Zadie never stopped participating in life and contributing to his and our stories up until the very last moment. This restlessness was not one of boredom, but it was a symptom of a lust for life. I remember being confused as a child about why my Zadie never sat still, why he always seemed to have one foot out the door every time he visited. My mom comforted me at a young age, saying that it was just the Spilkus and that I had it too. In as many words she would tell me, she goes, Sam, just sit for a second. Try to imagine one thing, just one thing, solo. You can't do it, can you? That's him and you. I got a lot from my Zadie. I remember I showed up at my Bubby and Zadie's house, freshly 18 and beaming with pride and excitement, ready to show off my very first tattoo of what would become many. Suffice to say, my Zadie let me know exactly what he thought about that. He pointed to his faded and blotched navel tattoo, the one that he got to match his older brother Mel, and said, just wait, it'll end up like that. He lamented with me and said that he had thought he had taught me better, and couldn't I see the mistake I had made? People wouldn't take me seriously. They would judge me. He had been judged. You know, he had to own up to the fact when he was in Japan that he may very well be the infamous Jewish Yakuza gangster that was moonlighting as a visiting professor. So he had to keep it hidden because at that time they weren't accepted. Like I said, he left me with a lot of gifts, both direct and indirect. I remember being very young as a child, fascinated by Zadie's war tattoo, and even asking my own parents if I could get one as early as middle school. Thank God they don't let children do that, because I swear I'd have a Blink-182 or Tony Hawk tattoo, faded and ready to impart my own wisdom on my child. Not that my own are much better now at 35. The point is that I idolize that man, and I still do. I've always been in awe of who he is, and I've lived each day guided by him in some way. He spent every minute with my siblings and I and my cousin, fully present. He filled the room we shared with stories, advice, and endless pools of love for each of us. We each know how proud of us he was. He watched us from the moment we were born until his very last day. He watched us take our own risks, find our own passions, our own loves, our own voices, and championed every decision we made, whether good or bad. Having someone in your corner like that changes you. You become more daring the way Mitch was. You become a more full person the way Mitch was. You become strong in spirit and will the way that Mitch was. You surround yourself with lifelong friends the way he did. You chase dreams and switch them only to go twice as hard in a new direction. You own who you are and you do so with pride. You stand for what you believe in and you never back down. You love. I see it in each one of us as his grandchildren. And each of you are here today also feel that effect. And know that the mark that he left on all of us will carry on and trickle down in time. Mitch will live on. The beautiful thing about my Zadie is that there's no end in sight for his story. His life was just too big. He did too many things and left too many impressions wherever he went. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life because it would be impossible to forget how much that he has shaped me. His voice will always be just past the horizon, and I hope one day to hear it again, because where it is, I'll be home. Thank you.
It's customary for the rabbi to share a few words on behalf of the Jewish tradition. Mitch was born in Detroit, the first generation of his family, along with his brother Mel and his sister Adele, Zichronah Livracha, may her memory bring blessings, in this country. Their parents had come from the old country, Russia, Romania, and so on, as children. Their dad, Sam, worked as a tire salesman and moved the family frequently, instilling in Mitch from a young age an openness to sudden changes and direction that would serve him well. After Mitch dropped out of high school at Cass Tech, we might imagine that his parents were concerned whether he had any direction at all. When Mel joined the Navy to serve in the Korean War, Mitch signed up as well to join him, where Mitch served on a destroyer as a Navy hospital corpsman. Given the incredible bond between Mitch and Mel, we might also imagine that somehow Mel was watching over his younger brother and providing that direction. After Korea, Mitch attended the University of Michigan on the GI Bill. You might be wondering how he managed that when he hadn't finished high school. And apparently some at the university were thinking the same thing, because at one point they wouldn't let him sit for his exams because he didn't have a high school diploma. And like many things in life, Mitch didn't let the world's norms stop him. He finessed that too. Mitch died days after Jews around the world together read from Genesis the story of Abraham sending his servant to find the best woman in the world to be his son's wife. Not only did the servant accomplish finding the most caring and brilliant woman in the world, but found her right away, and they married almost immediately, foregoing the normal year-long engagement. How could this have happened? It's like a miracle. The rabbinic explanation is a legend, that this couldn't be by chance, and the Talmudic rabbis attribute the magic to an invisible angel who flew out to make it happen, the angel Mikael, the leader of the great archangels. In Jewish tradition, there's a teaching that you are known by one name to the outside world, but of the world of the spirit, you are known by your soul name, which is the Hebrew name that your parents named you at birth. It has a special power. Mitch's Hebrew name is Mikael. And I'd like to think that the power of Mikael in him led to the world's best wife on the planet, in Carol. They met on a blind date arranged by Carol's cousin and her fiancé. Mitch showed up, and Carol tells me, said, he's not going to marry her. And of course, he was right. But Mitch, like the angel in the story, found what he was looking for in this amazing young woman at Wayne State whose heart is so pure, and like Mitch, in the right place, guided by a moral compass, positivity, and an open heart, who went from working on the adolescent crisis unit to working full-time in Ypsilanti schools on such important programs to empower young women to overcome the challenges that come with poverty and lacking privilege, to teaching special education. I think they saw in each other the same heart reflected back. One angel meeting another. In the Torah story, once the perfect woman is identified, she waives the engagement period and says, let's get married immediately. Mitch and Carol, they met around Thanksgiving, dated in December, married in January. August. Oh, it wasn't as quick as I was hoping. Okay, August. Well, it took some, okay. That's right. You were engaged in January and married in August. I wonder if Mitch's soul chose to pass from this world during that anniversary of Thanksgiving, of that anniversary of falling in love with Carol, because it was his touchstone of happiness. So who is this Mikael, this special name of Mitch's soul, famous for in Jewish tradition? Three qualities I think shared with Mitch. First, Michael, the leader of the archangels, is known for his adventurous leadership. He's the angel who was always active and he couldn't sit still. He would go fly anywhere, flying across the world to bring his moral compass to remote places, whether battling foreign empires when they encroach upon the defenseless, which is part of what Michael does in the tradition, to guiding the world toward justice, to open-heartedness and simply doing the right thing. In Jewish mysticism, Michael channels the special quality of getting people to work together toward a goal. Not through pushiness, giving orders, but through positivity, joy, and that it just feels good to do the right thing together. That's the way Mitch led professionally. He was always active, as we heard. He would go anywhere. Water departments, schools, up and down the state, fire departments, Tokyo, Vienna, England. The list goes on and on. I hope people share stories from each and every stop. His legendary leadership of the University of Michigan's urban planning program, legendary creation and co-creation and leadership of the urban security group, of the urban and regional planning programming, just to name a few of the programs and projects Mitch led in his illustrious career, was complemented by Mitch putting these ideas into action around the world. And in each place he led, he brought people together to solve problems and to make the world a better place. Through inclusion, through crime prevention, through safer water supplies, so on and so on and so on. In the words of one of his colleagues, Mitch did it by being a bridge builder. Second, Michael is known for the quality of open-heartedness, recognizing it in others and trying to show others, as an angel does, that that's the way forward for all of us, leading with the heart. It is this quality that really channels justice into the world. And third, Michael is known for agility in changing directions. An angel has to be agile. Flies out, assesses the situation, says, I think there's a different way to achieve this goal. Let's do it this way, instead of stubbornly trying to persist to achieve without flexibility. And I think we all know these qualities are qualities that Mitch had. When I think of agility and changing direction, who would you think of before thinking of Mitch? Who does multiple master's degrees instead of just continuing on? Who becomes a physicist and a mathematician? Who becomes a master dimension mathematician at Rockdyne Corporation? As Mitch said, and I know you know, I was the one who discovered that the Atlas rockets were blowing up as the result of a misdrawing. Asked how that felt, he said, that was exciting. And then decides to essentially start all over at the age of 40 by beginning a PhD in urban planning at exactly the time you've got the young family to support, and the whole family shifts, as we heard, and Carol becomes the breadwinner. Mitch does that. Who retires from an incredible career of achievement and then becomes novelist, weaving the real folks he knew from the Jewish neighborhoods of Detroit, from the military, from his travels, from his career, into compelling stories and riveting dialogue. Rub Up, Musings of a Navy Corpsman. These titles make me laugh. The Noble Profession of Leaf Chasing. Tea. The Soil is Dead. The Artist. Max's Fools. The Crooked Silk Road. Her Name Will Be Called Haggett. The Transmogrification of Esmeralda Bonnie Watkins. The Sad Saga of Angus McTavish. Nostalgious. A Death in Detroit. Not with a Whimper. Paperback Writer. That's Mitch. Saw no reason to be locked in, and I don't know many with that quality. And underlying it all was the quality of open-heartedness. It wasn't intellectual whim that caused Mitch to switch his studies. It was working with Frank Ferguson on a contract with the state of Michigan promoting equal opportunity hiring in the 1970s. They traveled through the state of Michigan, if I understand it correctly, Frank Black and Mitch White, trying to convince people to hire someone other than just white males. Like the angel Michael traveling great distances to open others' hearts, to reflect the divine image that every human possesses, this was the driving force behind Mitch's adventurous leadership. And when Frank learned he could not buy a house in Ann Arbor because of racial covenants, and do I have that right? Thanks. In the neighborhood, Mitch went from house to house collecting signatures to overturn the covenant. finally showing up with the papers in hand to Frank, saying, "You've got your house." Try to stop Mitch when he was on a mission. Together with Carol, Mitch generated such goodwill and open-heartedness in everyone they met. Everyone in the neighborhood knew how special their home was and their beloved family. Lisa and Peter shared with me a beautiful childhood of family trips to Wanderwood, fishing camps, all the trips up north with Mel's family, the holidays together in Orchard Lake, the cousins playing together. Mitch's open-heartedness was expansive. Mitch loved his wife, loved his brother, loved his children, and then children-in-law, and then grandchildren, and then great-grandchild. As we heard, he loved his dogs, Leroy, Sonny, and Kipu. He loved teaching his students, proudest title being professor. He loved his many, many close friends, and I know many are here today in person and through streaming, and I know the family is looking forward to hearing your stories at the Shiva. Mitch was loving and beloved. And like the angel Mikael going far and wide to shift the world in the direction of caring, of openness, and of doing the right thing, that was Mitch's ethical compass. That was the real long-term goal that guided him. And his willingness to shift direction was because he wouldn't let the world's norms stop him from doing anything. His calling was higher. And yet he did this not through argument, talking down, but he did it by example, through being loving and easygoing and open-hearted and available to everyone at any time, in any way. That is, by being a real Mitch. Of the four archangels that surround God's throne, Mikael is at God's right hand. May Mitch's soul take his place there now. Though, if I can make a prediction, there's a prayer that some Jews do before bed that asks instead for Mikael to take his place by their right side and stay with them through the night. When she invites it, may Carol have Mitch by her side always in his coming and going, in and out of this world. May she and his entire family and his dear friends and all of us feel his presence and his guidance always. Zichrono livracha. May his memory continue to bring many, many blessings to this world. It's my honor to call up Rabbi Rob Doberson at this time.
It is such an honor for me to be able to close this service with the memorial prayer in memory of Mitch, whom I picture with a beautiful smile, with his warmth, with his kindness. I will tell you that I learned so much about him in the last 45 minutes or so, and I'm sure I'll learn much more as the days go along. The stories are so beautiful, and I want to extend my condolences to the family. In the memorial prayer, we ask God to keep our beloved in the bond of life, Bitzora Chaim. That's important, but it's even more important that we keep him in the bond of life by telling his stories, by emulating him, by remembering the values and the principles by which he lived his life. And I can tell you one thing, I have absolutely no doubt that that is going to take place, because the words that were said this morning were so heartfelt and so meaningful. So may we always keep him in the bond of life, tell the stories, emulate him, and honor those qualities in our own lives that made him the person that he was. I'll ask you to please rise for the memorial prayer. El malei rachamim shochen bamromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina b'ma'alot kedoshim utonim kezor rakia mazinim b'nishmat Michael ben Shmuel ve'Esther shalach li'olamo Began Eden Tei Menuchato and Abara Rachamim Astireu Beseter Knafecha Liolamim Utzor Bitzorchem Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachlato V'yanuach B'Shalom Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Rycus, Michael ben Shmuel ve'Esther, who has returned to his eternal home. Oh God, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May we continue to tell his stories. May we continue to remember his voice, his actions, his love for all of us. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ask pallbearers to come up at this time following the turning of the casket. For those who are going to the burial at Arborcrest, you'll make it your way there on your own. And for those who are not, you're welcome to join us back at the house at the time of the Shiva, today and tomorrow. Family follows the casket. And we follow family.